Good afternoon, this is John from Pack. We're going to dive into a quick tutorial on feature blocks. So if you're currently building a site in Pack and you're building your homepage layout or you're building layouts on other pages, this is the tutorial to follow. We're going to be working with the PWR site. This is a site we're currently building for a client. And it's a good example because it's a content-only site, so it's not an e-commerce store, it's just content. So it relies quite heavily on some nice looking layouts. So this is a really good example to show you. So we're going to have a play around with some blocks that already exist, and we're going to build some new blocks. And I'm just going to try and give you an idea of all the different things you can do with the block building system in Pack. So this is the homepage of the site. You can see I've already got a couple of blocks in place. And I'm going to start by showing you what this layout looks like when we go into the site setup. So if we go into the, there's only one site on this account. So this is this one here, PWR website. So if I go in, you can see on the store homepage tab, you can see the block layout here on the left. So you can see that there's 4 blocks. 3 of them are actual blocks, and then we have a test block. So the layout that we see here on the left under blocks is what corresponds to the layout that we see on the right in the actual live page. So this is one row here with a single block. So that's what we'd call a hero. So a single row with a single block in it. We'd refer to that as a hero, especially if it's in the first position. So we have a block there with background image, some text, a header, button, and then we've got another row underneath with 2 blocks, 2 feature blocks with background color, text, etc., but no image. And then we've got this test block here, which is the one that we're going to start working with now, which is just an empty block at the moment with a gray background. So that's a good place to start. The simplest thing you can do with a block would be to create a row with a single block in it with no content at all, just the background color. And when I say background color, the background color can be white as well. And you can sometimes use that to your advantage. You can use a block to create some space. I wouldn't normally use just a completely blank white block, but using a white background color can create space, and I'll show you that in a minute. So let's go into this block here, this test block here on the left. So if I click here, it's going to take me straight to the test block, and I'm going to show you what this looks like at the moment. So there's always a name. The name is internal naming, just for you to find the block internally. But then you can see here, there's no background color. When you see this black, that means no background color selected. There's no title, there's no background image, there's no body, there's no button text, there's no link, there's absolutely nothing. This is a completely blank block. And like I say, you wouldn't normally use a completely blank block. You could use one as a spacer, but you probably wouldn't normally, because it'd be quite unpredictable how the site would look across different devices. So I wouldn't normally recommend using a completely blank block, unless perhaps it was in the middle of a row and you wanted to create space in the row. But again, on a mobile, the rows stack to a column, so you shouldn't be thinking in terms of sort of micromanaging your layouts like that. Anyway, let's just work with this test block and start to build it up and see what we can do with it. So let's start by just changing the background color. So let's use one of the background colors that already appears on this site. So we're going to click here, and I'm on a Mac here, so the Mac color picker is here, and I do use this a lot when I'm building layouts. So rather than actually going and getting the hex value for the color, I would click here, and then let's say I wanted this color, this kind of dusty pink color, I would just select it and then save. And then if I refresh, we'll see that now we've got that. So that's already looking cool. It already fits with the scheme of the site. That's really important when it comes to colors, background colors. You've got to stick with the scheme. That's basic fundamental branding. Don't just start clicking around and adding colors randomly. You've got to work with the colors you've got. So as you know, in Pack, you set one primary color, and the primary color for this site, as you can see from the button, is the pink color. That's the sort of hot pink color is the primary. But there's other combinations of colors. Now, PWR had a professional branding company produce their whole brand aesthetic, including the color palette. So they've got a fixed color palette that they work with, which I have access to. And those colors do appear in different places around this site. So you really want to do that. You want to establish your color palette before you start doing this, because otherwise you're going to end up just sort of clicking around at random and picking colors that don't go together. So have a color palette you work with. If you don't have one, you can go and you can literally just go color palette generator. There's loads of them online, okay? And you'll find this one. There's just tons. For example, this one. I don't know if I've used this one before. Yep, I've used this one before. This is a very good one. So you can literally just press the space bar. It's going to generate different ones, and you can start locking down colors. You can start off with your primary color or one of your colors and generate a palette around it. You've got to do that. You've got to have a professional color palette that goes well together, otherwise it's just not going to look good. That's your basics on color. So we've set the background color here. That's the simplest thing you can do, and now let's start building it up. So right, so that's going to be a title, and you can see if I don't put anything else in, I can just have a title. So this is actually a usable feature block. If you just want a block with some text in, this is how you do it. If you want, obviously, if you want the text to be big, which you probably would if it just had a single line in it. So, you know, I don't know, you might use this for a quote, for example. Right? You could do that. It's not particularly exciting, but you could do that. The next step would be to add some body text. So let's get this. So we would say about us, for example, and then let's just grab some lorem ipsum text. Let's just grab this, even though it's not lorem ipsum text. Actually, let's generate some. There we go. And fill the body out, save it, go back. And again, super simple. A heading, a title, and some body. Okay, so we're building up in complexity as we go here. Now, if the background color was dark, so let's go with the hot pink color, we would probably want to, you don't have to, but you'd probably want to invert the color scheme. So the inversion of the color scheme is always going to invert the text and the button in the correct way. So again, you don't have to worry about the exact colors of the inversion or whether the button, how the button should be inverted. You're just going to click invert color scheme and we're going to see everything invert. Okay, so again, you don't have to worry about the exact way the inversion's done. It's just a sort of a design choice you make. And now let's add a button. So the button can be a button that can link to any part of your site or any external site. So it can link anywhere on the web. So let's just say read more, for example. And let's say that we were going to link it to their About Us page, which I've already created. So now if I paste the link in here, no, that's the text. Let's get the link. Now this isn't absolute link because it's got the HTTPS on the beginning. If it's an internal destination, you don't want the absolute link. You only want to use that absolute link if you're sending the user somewhere external. Okay, in this case, it's an internal page, so we'll just do the relative link, which is that /page/y us. Okay, if we click that and refresh, then we're going to get the button. So the button has a couple of styling options. Again, it doesn't allow you to choose the exact colors and everything, and that's because we always want the site to look correct. So you choose just from 3 options. So we can have, at the moment, we've got outline text color, and then we've got outline primary color. So I think this is not going to look good, right? Because the color is pink. Yes, so it's disappeared, right? So you wouldn't choose that one. So let's show you what that looks like by picking the other dusty pink color. And now we can see. So this does look good now. In fact, but I would probably want to uninvert the color scheme. So you can see we're just choosing from a simple palette of options. We're not, we're only picking one color and then we're inverting, or we're choosing different styles for the button, and it's always going to look more or less good unless you stupidly did what I just did, which was to choose the primary color as the background and the color as the button. So here's the solid primary color style. And there you go. So you can see what we've done here. We've just made a small combination, and this is a good example of how you combine the ingredients, the simple ingredients, in a simple way. So you can see these 3 blocks. They kind of look good together, right? Because these two, they have different color backgrounds. They're very simple, but this one's inverted and this one isn't inverted. And then this one is the same background color as this one, but it's got a different style button, which gives a little bit of variation. And I think it looks really good already. So this is basically the simplest thing that you can do with one block, but you've seen all the different combinations that you can do with it. So this does allow you to do quite a lot of cool stuff. What we can start to do is get a little bit more advanced with the content of the body. Okay, so this would sort of be the next level. So if we've done feature block 101, this would be feature block 102. So inside the body, you can write Markdown. Markdown is this HTML-like language, which is much more simple than, much more simplified than HTML, but it allows you to add things like headings and lists and stuff like that. So one of the tricks that you can do is, instead of using this title, we could actually put some titles in here. So for example, this is a big title that's with one hash, and then this is a smaller title, so this will be with two hashes, and I'll show you where to get all this, the reference for this code, this Markdown, in a minute, and I'll put a link in the video as well. So there you go, you can see that. So this is not the title of the block now, this is part of the body content in the block. So you can do some cool stuff with the body. I can do italics and bold. So for example, if I want to make the first paragraph bold, I could do this. The first sentence bold, I could do this. If I want to make the second, let's make a few bits italic, for example. I think italic is just a single star asterisk. There you go. So this here is in italic, and this here is in bold. So that's how you can add some stuff there into the body to make it a bit more interesting. And then another thing you can do is use Unicode symbols and emojis. And that's just another way to add a little bit of spice into a block. So you can always find those if you just do a search for them. So like Unicode symbols. And you'll find here Unicode symbol table. So all text blocks in Pack are Unicode enabled, so you can just find a Unicode symbol that you like, and you can literally just copy it. It's just like any other letter of the alphabet. So I've copied that one, and then I can come in here and I could do this, and this is going to look really tacky, but we'll do it anyway. You have to be careful with stuff like this to make it not look really tacky, but if you use it judiciously, you can actually use it and make it look really good. So actually that doesn't look terrible. It kind of fits with the style of the site. I quite like that. So that's a Unicode symbol, and then you've also got Unicode emojis, which you have to be double careful with, right? Because these can look cool, but they can also look very tacky if you don't use them carefully. So again, and they render differently depending on the browser, so you can never be sure exactly what it's going to look like. It depends whether the person's looking, the browser's looking on mobile, desktop, Apple, Android. It really depends on what they're browsing with. So that's with an emoji. So it's an option. You've got it as an option. And then just to sort of round off Unicode stuff, Markdown stuff, this will be a list. So an unnumbered list. As you can see there, it's gone to the left. So you can do all these kind of stuff. You can get the reference for the Markdown. We always have this little question mark here. If you click it, it's going to take you to the Markdown cheat sheet. So this is the quick place where you get all the Markdown. Again, I'll put a link to this in the video. But you can do some quite cool stuff with this. You can do quotes. It's very simple. You can do horizontal rules. That's kind of handy as well. But you'll be surprised how creative you can get with it, and you can create some really nice looking effects with it. And the other big thing you can do inside the Markdown is you can actually put links and images. So images is the big one. I'm going to come back to that because we're going to do background images first, and I'm going to sort of explain the difference when you'd use one and when you'd use the other. Okay, but what I want to do is I want to show you how we can expand. So at the moment we've got this row here that we're looking at is just one block. What I want to do is to put some more blocks in this row so I can show you. So if I go to websites and I edit this, so this one called text block, excuse me, we're going to add some more into this row. So I'm just going to pick from the ones that I've got. Okay, so here we are. Let's say Let's just repeat the same block a couple times so we can easily understand what we're doing. So I've got the same block repeated 3 times, save it, and now you're going to see that the bottom row goes into a 3-block arrangement. And this allows me to sort of demonstrate one of the things about rows. So you can see the way the page renders, the rows, there's no space, there's no horizontal space in between each block in a row, which means that you can use rows as like a single compositional unit. If you set the background color to the same, which is what we've done here because we've just repeated the same block 3 times, you can see that they blend into each other. And what this means is that you can do some quite cool things. You can make hero shots out of 2 blocks, but that actually look like 1 block. The only thing you have to remember is that this is on a desktop. And you can't predict exactly how each row is going to render depending on the width of the screen. So as I start to bring the screen down, we're still in a 3 up arrangement, but at some point this is going to flick to a 2 up arrangement, okay, or straight in when it gets too narrow. There you go. So it's flicked into a 2 and a 1 arrangement, okay. There's still no gap in between these blocks because they form part of a single conceptual row. Even though it's not displaying as a row, conceptually they're together. So there's no, see, the background is all merged together. Okay, so that's something to take into account when you're designing rows. You should think of a row as like a unit of content that goes together, that's displayed in an unbroken way. So if you see, even if it's not the same background color, so you see these 2 blocks here, our services and why us. When I start to collapse the screen, you see they're going to switch into column mode in a minute, but there won't be a gap between them. You see, there's no horizontal line here, as there is in between here and here, because those are different rows. Okay, so you should think about a row as being a single conceptual unit of content, but it's not necessarily going to display as a row. It will if it can, if it's got the screen width, but it won't always display like that. Okay, so what I often use these rows for are creating effects which kind of look like a single row, but are composed of 2 blocks. And so when they go onto mobile, they're going to look good. So if you actually look on the pack site at the moment, our hero is done like that. Okay, so this hero shot you can see is 2 blocks, the left one and the right one, and they look good as a row, but they're also going to look good as a column arrangement. Okay, so, and I'll explain how I've done this image in a minute, because that's that's the next topic really that we're going to come on to. So how we deal with images here. So let's go back to this and delete all of these extra blocks. Okay, and go into this test block and start again. Let's just remove all the body and the button. Okay, and we're going to start working with background images. So let's just choose a background image to start with and see what we can do with it. So let's choose this one and save it and just reload and see what happens. Okay, so what happens with background images? What's the deal with a background image? A background image is always going to cover all the available space. Okay, that's the thing you need to know. It's not going to stretch out of proportion. It's always going to be in proportion, but it's always going to take up the space to cover the background of the feature block. Now, because the feature block can change shape quite drastically depending on whether you're viewing on mobile, whether you're viewing on a big screen desktop, a small screen desktop, you never quite know what shape the feature block is going to be in. So you should think of the background image as a background. So as a texture, as a decoration, it's something that the rest is going to sit on top of, and it shouldn't be too important. Obviously, it's always going to have, it's an image, there's going to be some element of importance to how it looks, but it's got to be the type of image which looks good in lots of different arrangements. So you can see how this changes. Obviously, as we go really wide, it doesn't look great. Okay, but so you might think, okay, I won't use this image. It's not a great image for very wide arrangements. Or, for example, if we were going to, let's just go back to websites. Let's double up on this block. Okay, save it, just so we can see what it looks like in a slightly narrower arrangement. So now here it's more interesting because this block, we know it's never going to go ridiculously wide. Okay, it's going to go to sort of, that's the widest it can go, and then it kind of looks good everywhere. So there's a bit of a judgment to be made on what makes a good background image. This is a fairly good background image, even though it does have a strong focal point, which is the normally that's the advice I give. An image which has a very strong focal point isn't often great, although there are ways that you can sort of get around this with this control here. So this image position control describes which part of the block the image is anchored to, and this is really important for images that have a strong focal point, that you kind of would rather that focal point stay in the frame as much as possible. So for this one, for example, the focal point is the glass, and the glass is kind of it's on the right, and we sort of like the center of it, I think, to be, you know, where the flowers are, to be anchored. So I'm going to choose middle right. I think that's going to be the right anchor point. Okay, let's save that and refresh. And now you see that it's moved now. Okay, so you see that it's vertically, it's in the middle, and hopefully as we start to move this, you'll see, yes, so it's, as the block expands, you see that it expands with the image anchored just where we want it, so on the right and in the middle vertically. So that's really cool. That gives us a lot of control. And you can see how I've used this with this photo at the top. Now this photo of the two girls, their heads are actually cut off in the photo, so it's not the block that's cutting the photo off. That is actually the photo. Actually, I'll show you the block. Why not? So it's this one here. So you can see the background image is this one here. But what I want is for the image to always be anchored at the top. So it doesn't matter what I do with the page. You see, I grow the block vertically, horizontally. It's always anchored to the top, which is what I want. I want that sort of bit where their heads are cut off to show. So that's how you use effectively the anchoring when you have a background image. You just need to sort of choose what's the most important part of the image and how you want the block to grow with respect to that image. Now, if it's an image which has a very strong focal point where you need that part of the image to display entirely, it's probably not a good candidate for a background image. So avoid it, basically. So anything that's like a product shot where you don't really want it to get cut off, it's not going to look good cut off. I mean, you'll be surprised. Some product shots can look good when they're cut off, but there are certain things, anything normally with text in it, or like a label or a tag or something like that, is not going to look good as a background image because it kind of needs to be seen completely to make sense. So those kind of images, the kind of image you call a focus point image, they don't make good background images. So just avoid using those as background images. Try to think decoratively. Think of lifestyle images. Think of textures, gradients, things like that can look great. Okay. Now, the other thing you need to know about background images, which is it allows a lot of creative flexibility, is that the background image is actually placed on top of the background color that you choose. Now, most of the time you won't be able to see the background color because the image will be covering it up. Okay, but if you are clever with your use of transparency in the image, you can actually get the background image to shine through, and then you can create some really cool effects. So this is what I've done here on this pack image in the hero. So the image on the left is actually a PNG with the background removed. So we took this image, we removed the background with Photoshop or something like that, and then we save it as a transparent PNG. So that there's no background color baked in, it's just transparency in the background. And then we set the background color of this block to this blue, the same one as the block on the right. And what that allows us to do is sort of superimpose a background image on top of a background color. And doing this, you can do some really cool effects. So in this case, what we did, we took the image and we processed it and we colorized it blue. And there's another example of this on the Tapas Lunch Company wholesale site. We've done the same thing. Actually, slightly different. We have taken an image here of a chef, and we've colorized it red on the same red as the primary color, and we've placed it on a white background here. Okay, so there's lots you can do here with this concept of transparent background images. So in this particular site, I'm just going to see if we've got one that I can show you. We don't have one immediately available to use here, but those are the best examples I can think. And actually we have another one here is a really good example. So this image here with the dog and the plates of food is a professional graphic with the background removed. So the company, the manufacturer, had the products professionally shot and had a professional image editor remove the background. And even these really nice sort of drop shadows on the plates are built into the background image. And then we have placed that on the blue. So the blue is not part of the image. The blue is the background color of the feature block. So you can see that this looks really cool, really professional, and it's a great trick. It's just in general a very good trick to use. I think we've done the same thing here with the dogs on the white background. So that's kind of a cool thing you can do with background images. And let me show you what happens when you start to combine it with text, because it's a different effect to when you don't have a background image. So what I showed you before, when we started adding text and titles and all that stuff, you see that it just appears on top, straight on top of the background image, the background color. But when we've got a background image, we can't do that because you wouldn't be able to read the text in a lot of circumstances. And you see this all over the web, right? People putting background images and they're putting text on the top, and you just can't read the text because you have to get it right. You have to get the color of the text right, the boldness of the text right. There's a lot that can go wrong. So basically, we try to avoid that situation. So let's add some stuff in, copy a bit of text. And what you're going to see is that when you put text, any kind of text, even a title, just a title on its own, even just a button on its own, it's going to create a shim. So a shim is this white sort of transparent area which we put the text on top of so that it's always legible. So you don't have to worry about doing that. The system does it automatically for you, and you're always going to have legible text. So once you've added some, so let's add a button as well so we can see how that looks. We have the same options with the button, right? So here we've got it in the solid primary color, and we might just do outline text color. And so we can create different effects here. As you can see now, it's already, obviously the block is doubled up, so it looks a bit weird, but you can see that it fits in general with the scheme of the site. And the small amount of control we've got here is where we want the shim to appear. So we can either have the shim at the top, in the middle, or the bottom. So here you see vertical align content bottom, and the shim sits at the bottom of the block. We can change that to middle, and that's going to put it in the middle of the block. And then we can also change it to top, which is going to put it at the top of the block. So you can mix and match these as well. And that gives you, again, just a small creative trick that you can use. You can either mix it up, or you can, within a row, it's often better to keep them all the same. But you could sort of mix and match. We could have a row like this, and we could have then a row underneath with the shim at the bottom of the blocks. So that sort of gives you a bit more control there. Let's start to now talk about embedded images. I think that's the right thing to do now. So we are going to go to another page because I've used this trick on some other pages here. So this is obviously with feature block layouts, the main place you're going to use them is on the home page. But you can also create feature block layouts within any pack page. So for this site, we've got a page called Services, and there's no body text on this page. It's just all feature blocks. So I've used the feature block system to create sort of a nice custom looking page. I've used just the standard sort of title and subtitle, but then I've started to build up a layout here. So this is a cool one. You can see that we've got a simple image block on the right. So there are use cases for just having a block with a background image and nothing else for decorative purposes. And then in the same row, you can see here I've got just some text with some markdown. With the background color, I just use the color picker to pick the background color out of the image on the right, so it blends in really nicely. So that's one trick you can do. And then I've got a couple of rows here. Again, just the background image and the text. Used some Unicode symbols here just to add a little bit of flair. And then here we've got just a simple background color. And then this is the first time you're seeing it. This is an embedded image. So you can see this is very different. This is not a background image. This is the client's logo, but it's embedded into the text. And the way you do this trick is with Markdown. Okay, so let's find this block and let's have a play around with it. So if we go back to the feature block here and try to find this one, blending these together is the name of it. Okay, so you can see background image, you can see the image there. In when you actually edit it, it's shown at full width, so that's why it's blurry, but you can see it's not blurry here. So how do we do this? So we've got the text here, and then we've got the little snippet to embed the image. Now you can get this in the Markdown cheat sheet. It tells you how to do it here. Sorry, here. This is the image insertion code. So basically it's just an exclamation mark, then in square brackets, it's the alt text for the image. So you can't actually see this. This is for screen readers and stuff. And then the link to the image. And you get the link to the image from your account. So you just go to Files, Images, find the image you want and put the image in. The only thing you need to learn how to do is control the parameters to control different aspects of how you want the image to show. And I'll show you the documentation for this in a minute. But basically, if I remove this and just put the image link here, you'll see that it's going to be huge because that's the original size of the image, okay, without any kind of processing applied. And it's still limited to the width of the block, so it's not going to go outside of the block, but it looks kind of crazy. So let's reduce it down. And the way we do that is with the parameter system. So question mark W equals 100. That's width equals 100. Now I know that because I've used it lots, but there's actually documentation which tells you all the different parameters available, and I'll point you to that documentation in the comments in the text for the video. So now it's at 100. There's lots you can do with these images. There's parameters for everything: width, height, cropping, colorization. You can control saturation, blur, contrast. There's absolutely loads of stuff you can do. And I've used it quite extensively here to create this layout. Okay, so what's going on here? Each of these that you see is a block. Okay, it's got a title, and then it's got an embedded image, which has some processing applied to make it look circular. Okay, they're quite simple. So if we go and open up the first one, which is called Press Events, you can see all there is a title, Press Events, which corresponds to this, and then the embedded image in the body. So you can see I've used the body creatively. There's no text in the body, just an image. So again, that's completely allowed. You can just have one image, multiple images. It's just embedded in the content. So when you embed an image into the body, you're always going to see the whole image. It's not contracting and expanding to cover the size of the block like it does if it's a background image. So here you can use sort of more focal point images like product imagery, logos, anything where you want to see the whole thing. You can use them inside a block. Now you can see there's tons of parameters here. And again, I didn't write this by hand. I actually took the documentation for the image processing library, and I played with their UI and I got these parameters from it. So this is a mask, and then it's a width and a height and a fit and a crop and blah blah blah, and you can see what it does. I think we've actually doubled up some parameters there. And you can see that it produces this circular output, which looks really cool. Okay, this block does something else. So this is a single block and with multiple images embedded in it. Okay, so if I go to brands we've worked with block, which is this one, background color, yeah, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 images, all basically with the same height parameter. So what I wanted to make sure each one had the same height, and you can see they haven't quite got the right height, and that's because the images haven't been cropped properly. So we might have to go back in here and recrop these images so that they're all cropped tightly so that the height is perfect. But it's this which is doing the magic here, this pad equals 30. You can see what that's doing is creating space around each image. Okay, so that the layout actually looks quite nice and natural, and even works when we start to flex. You can see that they move as you expect they would, because the browser takes care of spacing them around. So again, you don't have to worry about the layout. Really, you just embed the images. And then that's followed up here by just some simple background color and text. So to get a good looking layout, you're going to want to mix different feature blocks types. That's the key to getting something that looks good. So mix background colors, but don't always go heavy on the background colors. So if we go back here, one of the things that we might want to do would be to break this up a bit with just a white background color. So you can see how we do that here on the Naku site. These blocks, they blend nicely into the page in general. You can't even really tell that they're a block because they're on a white background. And that just kind of makes them feel part of the page, and it just takes away a bit of the heaviness of filling up the whole thing with either background images or background colors. And then also using background images which have a white background themselves is another good trick, so that you're creating space. That's the important thing. You can see if we were to use background images and background colors throughout the whole page, it would be very heavy, but we've taken away some of that by using these white backgrounds. Okay, and lots of different combinations of text, background colors. So use all the tools that the feature blocks give you to combine all the different background colors, text options, button options, and you'll be able to create something which looks very professional and is quite interesting to look at as well. So if we look at this about page, again, here's a good example. Now this is a page which has some body content, so this is not a feature block, this is just the standard page content, but then I followed it up with a feature block layout. So here we've got two blocks, both background color pink, so that they blend in together and make a row, a sort of a visual row, but will also split correctly like that. And then I have made these sort of individual blocks with an embedded transparent PNG. So here you go. This is not a background image, obviously. This is an embedded image, and the image itself is a transparent PNG, so it lets the background color shine through. So this is yet another way you can do it. Obviously combined it with title, I've combined it with some Markdown, mixed and matched colors, and that looked good. And here I've reused the feature block from the other page. Okay, the one with the 6 different images and the padding. So as you can see, it looks good embedded in the page, and I've reused some of the block. Well, I've reused one of the blocks from the home page. Okay, so in the home page, I'm probably going to leave it with this 3-block arrangement. Actually, I quite like it. So if I go to websites, and I'm just going to remove these test blocks. And really, that would be enough for a simple presentation style site. That would probably be enough, because like I say, I'm reusing the feature blocks heavily on their content pages. And that's about it, really. So it's just a case of using the ingredients that you have, the simple ingredients that you have, mixing and matching. Don't make every feature block look exactly the same. Use background images, but use background colors, but also just use white backgrounds. Use inverted text, use positive text, use Markdown to spice up the text that you're writing in the bodies, use buttons in some, not in others, and use embedded images, use the different parameters that you have at your disposal to change the way the images are displayed. Use the shims, place the shims in different places. So just mix and match, and use plenty of white space as well. And don't go overboard with the background colors. Keep the background colors within your color scheme, and you're going to get a good result.